Terry Crews. I'm about to Weinstein. All right. That was bad. All right. I get it. I'll cut it out. I'm about to cyberbully. Now listen. Terry Crews has got to be the bitchest nigga I've ever seen in my entire life. Who takes coon to the most astronomical levels I think I've ever seen in my entire existence. And I know it takes me, it makes it really hard to take my voice on this seriously if I start out name calling Mr. Crews. I'm not calling Mr. Crews anti-black. All I am saying is he might like his hot chocolate without the chocolate. Time and time again, this dude has had opportunities to be on the straight and narrow and be consistent in some form or fashion. Now, I'm not calling him a hypocrite just for insult purposes. We're all hypocrites to some degree. I'm a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. We all do things and grow from those things, and then we look back on those things and say, hey, I might have been wrong there. Let me change my voice or my thought. But when you make your belief on something known, and you're at a point where I would assume you would have a greater understanding of the things that you want to participate in, is at least as far as movements are concerned, I don't really expect you to flip-flop on things like that. So it gave me pause not too long ago when Terry Crews was promoting this anti-patriarchy, I'm for women, me too, believe all women type of rhetoric. And then when he had the opportunity to defend a black woman, despite him being the very same black man who called out black men for not defending black women, he coddled up and shut up and went and crawled back into Weinstein's arms. When asked about Gabrielle Union and her experience on America's Got Talent, Terry Crews decided to clutch his own nuts just like his agent did to him when he was at that party and not say a thing, not corroborate her story, not say I believe her, not say I'm on her side. Regardless of whatever's going on with my experience at America's Got Talent, I believe my sister because she's always struck me as a woman with integrity. I don't believe her to be a liar, so if she said it happened, I believe her. But what did this man do? He got up there and said, I'm going to refer to my wife. So now at the very top of black people and just everyone almost collectively in the U.S. having a view into what black people for a long time have been saying about police brutality over the last couple of years, Terry Crews takes this opportunity to coon to the maximum level. I don't know how many other coons you have to beat in order to get to Terry Crews' level of coonery. You got to go through Jason Whitlock. You got to go through Stacey Dash. You got to go through Daniel Caesar. This man said, defeating white supremacy without white people creates black supremacy. Equality is the truth. Like it or not, we're all in this together. Now, I know people will probably have an issue with me even saying anything about his comment because a lot of people will look at it and be like, hey, there's nothing wrong with what he said. You can't beat white supremacy without white people. You do realize there would be no white supremacy without white people. But that's not what I'm trying to say here, okay? I don't like making these videos to remind my white audience every day that they're white because they wake up with that every day. For those who don't know, supremacy is like a more fancy word for racism. The belief that you are superior to another. And what Terry Crews is trying to say here is if we don't keep ourselves in check, we're going to be victim to this exact mentality if we ever get from underneath the white supremacy. Problem with Terry Crews. Shut the fuck up because that's fucking stupid. You do realize the protests and the marches and the riots for the most part have been to get those people, those same white people you say that we need, to bring more attention to what's been going on. Basically saying here is that white people, if black people don't keep themselves in check, are likely to be the victims of black racism. Here's the thing that I need y'all to understand that agree with him. I've heard for a very long time now, and I don't know where people got the definition that racism in itself means something that is institutionalized that keeps a certain group more oppressed than another group. I'm paraphrasing. And while I do believe those things have kept a certain group in this country away and down for a very long time, I also believe that interpersonal racism is a thing, wherein you could be a racist individual to someone regardless of whether or not you hold any power. Definition is you believing that there is a superiority that you have because you are this and this person is that. While I do understand that interpersonal racism is a thing, you have to understand the difference between the victim of black racism and the victims of white racism. Black people have a fear of possibly being lynched, thrown in jail, killed by the police, whatever the case may be. When white people are talking about racism that goes against them, for the most part, they're talking about hearing words that they don't like being thrown around or having to deal with rhetoric that they might deem offensive. I don't think white people are walking around in a black neighborhood worried about whether or not they're about to get thrown in the back of a car and buried alive. I don't think white people are jogging through neighborhoods worried about whether or not they're going to get gunned down by somebody just watching them in a black neighborhood. I don't think white people are worried about dealing with the police. I don't think white people are worried if they're going to get a business loan. I don't believe white people are worried about not getting hired for a job because of their race. See, these are the things that people like Terry Crews does not understand. Racism affects people on different scales based off who holds majority power in the country. But while a black person can definitely have racist ideals and most certainly believe that he himself or she herself is superior to the white race because they are black, that's about as far as that ideology is going to go for them if they hold no power in whatever land that they see fit. The reason why people talk about race from white people is because for the most part there is evidence of black people being held back by the exact same thing. And I get it, no one should have to deal with the words of a bigot, but it'd be a hell of a lot easier in this country for black folks if white people didn't also maintain the power in this country while having some of those racist ideas. Because if they held the same power, then white people would be charged the same way black people are in this country. Black people would have equal opportunity in the workforce and in business. Black people would have a higher defense against being racially profiled. Black people wouldn't feel uncomfortable in majority white settings. See, what Terry Crews fails to understand is even if those ideals were at some point held by black people, unless black people ever maintain majority power in this country, white people don't have to walk around in fear or walk around on eggshells, walk around with the anxiety looming around them over whether or not their lack of success is attributed to their race. You have to realize that black people aren't fighting to have power in this country. Black people are fighting to be seen as equals in this country. They're not even fighting to rule. But Terry Crews' nutsack is so firmly gripped by the hand of the white society that he can't for a second fathom black people even thinking that they're worth anything. He saw a couple tweets about black beauty and a couple tweets about I'm so glad I'm black and I'm proud and went crazy. Loving yourself for being black and embracing the blackness within you isn't something that has been a celebrated thing in this country. So the second someone like Terry Crews sees black people loving each other on the premise of being black, because for the longest time they've been told to hate themselves for being black, you want to say, don't get ahead of yourself now. We still got to go to master. And that isn't even the black goal. The black goal is to have these other groups along with us while we fight for equality. Black people aren't stupid. They're not looking at white folks and being like, oh no, we don't need y'all as allies. The premise of this entire movement is to get those allies to see the movement so that they can use whatever privilege they have to help these people get into those spaces. Do they just make a factory of niggas like you? Like, I don't understand. Forget the KKK, because Terry Crews is about to become the leader of the CCC. The color-coded coons. I don't really expect anything from a coward that comes out and joins the Me Too movement just to say to a black woman when she could use his support later on when he's working at the same establishment and has the opportunity to defend her honor in her name, doesn't. Don't preach these ideas and then hop in and out when it benefits you. Terry Crews is a black man with the illusion of white privilege. He's able to jump in and out of social movements and hashtags when it supports his ideas or when it supports his own motives, passed off through the mainstream as somewhat marketable because of his family man attitude and his soft demeanor, despite his consistently ignorant statements that tend to only negatively affect the perception of marginalized groups. He's able to get away with doing dumb shit like this on a consistent basis because it doesn't affect the status quo. He has this privilege, in my opinion, so long as he's complicit. And to this day, I wonder why his agent felt comfortable walking up to him and just copping a feel like that. Suppose that no prior history, this dude just walks up out of all the niggas to fondle. He chooses the 6'3" muscle-bound head ass dude who looks like he eats glass and drinks gasoline. You decide to jiggle his jollies. That's the hose that you just needed to be sprayed down with. You know what Terry Crews told people when he was on that stand a couple years ago? Dude asked him why he didn't fight back. And again, he didn't have to explain that because survivors are survivors. However you handled it is just how you handled it. But this dude's first response was,
"You only have a few shots."
Why is that the first thing that you said? That sounds like a line that the dude who's offering you the job would give you. As he's unbuckling his pants, you only got one shot. There are plenty of white folks that I know that are great people. I'm not demonizing white people, but the white people that I have in my life have this awareness or understanding that if racism happens to the both of us, they are not affected in the same way that I would be affected. They realize that. Not to say that anyone should have to deal with it. is just to say that this affects people disproportionately on such large scales, in such disparaging numbers, and in so many different instances that one group doesn't generally complain about it because they see how harshly it affects the other group. That's why we have 50 states that have protested, because people are seeing what's happening. So no, Terry Crews, black people aren't ostracizing white folks. In fact, they acknowledge that they need them. You don't have to worry about black supremacy, because I promise you, if black people ever get to a point where they're the main power in America, they're not kicking out white folks to help them get there. They're kicking out people like you, the coons, the Uncle Toms, the people that are opportunists. That's what you are. You're not an ally. You're an opportunist. This man worked out damn near half his life to get huge, not to defend himself from being groped at a party in front of his wife, but to make his titties move on screen for people's entertainment. I'm done. How did you play your role in Everybody Hates Chris and take absolutely nothing away from it? Wait. They have Chris from Everybody. Yo, I'm not trying to call you out. You know it's all love. You're getting sunned by your TV son. How? This is a simulation. This has to be a dream. This man really wasn't playing when he played on White Chicks. He really was acting himself.